This is a demo and drawing. I'm drawing a still life today. I'm using professional graphite pencils. And those pencils are different variations of HB, 4B, 2B. So I have a series of different numbers of grades of the graphite, which goes light to dark, medium. Um, and the darker it gets, the softer it gets. It just leaves a very strong mark. Your pencils turn into absolute paints in a way because you learn the different grades of a pencil, and they're just a joy to use as a tool to convey what you're seeing. I am seeing a still life that I want to get all the details in. I tend to have a heavy hand, and so my mark making is very, I mean, I want to see it, but I actually consider it light just starting. Certain things I may hone in on, and all of a sudden sort of like have a passion. I may make dark to say this is my mark, this is where it starts, or this is what I'm seeing. And so I try to get all that in as I'm doing my drawing of the still life. A still life can take a good hour of getting in your initial details, depending on how complicated one has made it. Um, but this is more of like a coffee can and everything that may have surrounded the coffee can. So I kept it very simple for my demo. Um, and I just tend to really like to do still lives that have a lot of things around it sometimes, almost like a puzzle for the eye to locate where the piece is. But I also love doing simple things as well. It depends on how much time I have to put it together a good still life. I don't use erasers as much as one would think. I use like a kneaded or a gum, and it's kind of to draw or highlight the areas instead of erase what others may think of as a mistake. Mistakes can be eradicated by the use of shading. And here I am doing a series of mark making that is cross hatching. So cross hatching and shading elements can be repeated and repeated until you get a desired darkness, or just initial marks that were done with a lighter pencil or even a different type of uh, point, because you can do this also in pen and ink. Um, it depends on how light you want your shading and how dark you want your shading. So cross hatching is a great way to achieve either one, because of its repetitive nature of cross hatching and crossing one line over the next line until you get your desired effect. Then you don't really, there is no set darkness, as you touch the paper, unless you're using ink and you're doing some interesting cross hatching marks made with a thicker quill. So we get to see that. And then there's just the shading techniques that you can use to make something look like it's going forward or backwards. Okay. Here we have our, trusty sphere, like our a ball, and you can just really get to feel the ball as you're adding in shadow of it, like rolling or tilting. And so, I mean, I think it's also very important to always create a foreground and a background, unless your objects are meant to be suspended in air. The darkness of a shadow that is underneath that ball can lean the eye to it rolling forward, you know? So, or maybe it like was a lemon and it just dropped and it's bouncing somewhat off the ground. So I mean there's a lot you can do with drawing techniques and just understanding foreground and background when it comes to your object. Eventually, we'd love to just really add in the lights and darks in certain areas and eliminate total line, but there's nothing that can be created without line. And here we have it. Steak. I am going into oil pastels, and what I've done is I was previously doing a self portrait of myself at a different time. I decided to go into this self portrait. Although my face was at a different position, I had my hair in a different way. I decided I was wearing glasses. I decided to use a mirror, which I often do when I do self portraits. I enjoy using mirrors, and I am looking in the mirror, and I'm absolutely changing the position of my face, my lights and shadows in my face by literally going into the piece. I'm adding color, and that is literally changing the perspective of certain areas. This way, turning my face a certain way, showing more of a definition of, let's say, a nostril than the other side. So I'm literally turning my face and adding glasses, changing hair. So there's a lot I'm doing here. And by adding like lights or blues or greens, which I'm seeing on my face in the mirror, I have a hypersensitive. I'm very hyper color, so I can see color off of skin and objects and reflection, very bright. And so I try to get that in before it's almost like it may fade or it may go away or it's always changing because we are made up of this very energetic vibrations. You can see color hitting your face in an area that in a blink of an eye, the outside light can change and everything changes within the inside as well, no matter whether we're using a natural light. So it becomes very interesting. And I also believe that my use of color um, is a fight against a flat painting. You know, you don't want a flat painting, so you want to be truthful with what you're seeing with your eye. And that does take some training. It maybe takes some squinting to see color that you may not normally see. But I see hypercolor, I see color. And so I'm using a lot of greens in this, believe it or not. And I also have lavenders and purples also in this as well. It's not that I'm taking out the first color in my toolbox. I am taking out color um, out of my toolbox that I see. Okay, so and I'm putting it on the face. So I'm doing this whole reconstruction, which I thought was pretty interesting, and just absolutely changing my face of color with pastels was a lot like what I would have done with oil paint or acrylic paint. But since I'm an oil painter, I would have done it with oil paint, although you can do it with any medium. It's a subtract and addition. This is an addition and subtraction kind of method, and that's with all art. We wind up adding and taking away in everything, whether it's sculpture, drawing in graphite, watercolor, oil paints, it doesn't matter. That's how we see. Those are our erasers using the medium over again to subtract and add. I find oil pastels a little sticky. I really enjoy them. I kind of I don't see them as oil sticks like oil paint. I'm not trying to mimic that. I think they have their own texture. They have their own medium, and but it's very satisfying to use oil pastels as opposed to a dry pastel, a chalky pastel. I really think that I like things that stick, that stay. I don't have to go back over and try to find it again, or try to, make that white, 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 white because it's an oil pastel. I enjoy working with I enjoy working with dry pastels. But I really love the oil pastel and how you're moving color. You can use color on top of color and see instant results. And in this way, it's much like paint. Uh, and the thickness of it it's just potent in mark making. You can see that. You can see that green coming through. And although the green may look odd, to the viewer who's watching me create, it turns into just a different light on the skin. Okay. As I continue to add various hues and of light and dark to the skin, I am also reassuring the viewer that this is skin by also bringing forth local color. And local color could be defined as the general color of a person that you would give a name to. So if you were looking at their skin, the overall coloring of the skin would be burnt sienna or a permanent rose with titanium white. So I think that, with a little dash of cadmium yellow, I mean, bringing it into almost a peachy pink sense. I mean, these are flesh tones that are generalized, but what's within the flesh tones are all these lights and darks that exist because of the surrounding objects and things, because skin is reflective, or it also comes from just what is in the color of the skin. I mean, meaning that the lights that are around it as well, the ambient. Um, you know, we can go so far. I mean, everywhere we walk in a room or on this earth, we have a certain amount of light and we have a certain amount of dark that surrounds us in coloring. There's always shadow, even in the brightest of sunlight. I mean, whether it's taking out a hat and therefore there's shadow on the face. I mean, there's always some kind of light and dark that makes up our face and and how others see us. Okay, so what I do in pastels and paint is basically I definitely notate the hypercolor that I have here, but I'm always bringing through also local color. So I'm bringing through a grounding effect of of the use of local color to almost ground these lights and darks into the viewer believing that they are just mere, lights and darks of the shadow, or lights and shadows around in the room or reflecting off the skin. It becomes very realistic or naturalistic and believable because once we look at one's skin in any light or by a window or natural light, um, we can see a certain amount of color. Sometimes it could be the whole side of the face is in like a pinkish glow, or there's green in the shadows of around the nose, or so I think that seeing color and hypercolor is very natural for the artist's eye. And even if you have, I mean, it's also, I guess it could be challenged if you are colorblind. And I do know some artists that have challenges in seeing color. Um, but they work it out, whether it's just the opposite. I mean, it may not be of that same vibrant palette, but the point is to be truthful to what you see, and to erase doubt, right? Okay, to erase doubt. I want to mention getting in the zone while you are doing your drawings, having an atmosphere and a surrounding that is supporting your meditation, if I will, of what you have, what you're focusing on, what your object is that you are drawing from. For me, it is a self portrait. I'm using a mirror. I'm at home, as you may see in the background. I'm home. And I am just steady, you know, doing this drawing of me in the mirror, using the mirror to see all the lights and darks I can catch in this room with natural light and also a light overhead. But I want to be able to flow, to follow lights and darks like it's a map, if you will, to the figure. It's like I believe in working inside out in this way. Um, I don't have anything against line drawing. I think that all the work that we do is based on the line, and there are definitely preliminary marks that I would say are definitely line, you know, but to complete a drawing in total line only because you know no other way is probably something that I would say, I would push against, I would learn another way of drawing. And especially as artists, I learned very, very many different ways, taking many different workshops and classes and different processes because it's literature for the arts. I mean, it's literally not just tools, but it's almost just the whole observance and to be able to observe the way another artist resolved an issue of achieving a form that they wanted to achieve in drawing, graphite and pencil. I mean, or something like that. You may want to see how that was done by somebody else. Not exactly something that you may copy, but you have to own your hand. You have to know your hand. And I think that's the luxury of being able to take a class that's associated with art, and which we would call a treasure, So um, it's just really quite interesting. And even in my demo here, I don't feel like I feel like I am in the flow. I'm drawing. I'm enjoying what I'm drawing. I don't feel like it's a hindrance. The camera next to me because I'm showing you. I'm feeling like I am communicating with your eye, from my eye to your eye, and it's the same viewer, regardless of whether you are in person or on a video screen. When it comes to communicating the visual. Forming and staying true to the eye. It is a meditation. There is so much that you don't want to allow in your thinking process while you're identifying color, shape, form, individuality. and being true to your eye, understanding what you see and recording it true to nature. These are, I mean, these are lessons that you always use in everything that you do. It's almost a permission to just be who you were born to be as artists. So you may think it's hypercolor, and then somebody might come behind you and say, "Oh, wow, that's like a really strong color. Do you really see that?" And then you may see that as some kind of judgment and abandon what you see. It will only lead to frustration. So be true to what you see. If you don't see something as bright as this, then you don't see something as bright as this, and that you have another palette that you must embrace, get to know, and explore, right? So we're going to be doing a lot of mixing of color when we start doing painting and oil pastels that can be layered over the other as if you were painting. So I think that this is very interesting. This is a very interesting study because one only helps the other as you go through. First of all, the self portrait can be such a tricky um, attempt, but then it can also be absolutely amazing. It could be amazing. I'm almost like in the shorter time frame that you have to create it, the most interesting things come out because regardless of what it is, you're going to capture some essence of you in that retraction, and it's just pure sheer honesty. So I really, hopefully that we get to a point in our lessons, perhaps next semester, or you go forward with another instructor in self portraiture and portraits. I mean, that would be really a beautiful um, conversation with yourself. And so this is what I'm doing here. As you see, I use the white to kind of reshape the face. I'm still playing around with the top lip, knowing that there's light just coming down on that bottom top lip, but there's also light on the bottom lip, so yet to really get down into it. I am staying away from white. What you see is almost the lightest blue, and it's kind of mixed with white. So it looks like white on the video, but it's actually not. It's like a lightest lavender and lightest blues. I'm trying to show how intense the light is, but only coming from one angle. So that's the interesting part as well. You see that I am finding the form, and I'm finding the form by continuously looking at my reflection in the mirror. I'm trying to follow every mark that I'm making, and it's almost like I don't see the face as a whole as much as I'm honing in to the area that I'm working in, whether it be the tip of the nose or the edge of the cheek, relating that there's bone there, flesh there, color, depth, surface, and trying to, uh, you know, stay true to my own zeitgeist of what I see rather than what I know. Okay? It seems that when we draw what we think we know, we're often wrong in the retraction. Wrong meaning it's not really our likeness, nor is it even our memory, you know. So I say give it a chance by learning, training the eye to constantly contour the face, body, object, any light that it's chasing, and wherever there is light, there is the fundamental dark. So whether the dark is in a hue or it's in a tone, meaning monochromatic tones, or shades of gray that lead to black, that start with titanium white, things like that. Unless it's in that kind of a tone, then you probably would see somewhat color. And even in certain retractions of tonal paintings, there still is other tone, color hues within those darknesses and those shades, And that's why I always tell my students never to use black in a painting. Try to use burnt umber mixed with uh, ultramarine blue with just a smidgen of titanium white. And when you mix that, it gives you this very dark, almost black color. And in fact, you could call it black. But because it's not this definite black where it just stops, like almost like an illusion of depth, it gives you this ambiguousness that something may be within the shadows, and I prefer that as opposed to making a shadow an absolute solid of a color like black, which I just beg to differ logically that it ever was or ever is. In fact, if you see blackness within the shadow, then you know, woo, that's almost a solidness, and it's something else, right? So I think that using the ambiguousness, not the exact color, maybe something that pops off exactly very close to it. Um, to me, that was the combination of titanium. I mean, excuse me, ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Definitely was the sum of that ambiguousness. That was like the most ambiguous color mix I think I can say. Purple, maybe, and areas that are outside or resemble air, believe it or not. Yeah, amongst the trees, amongst the greenery, one might, make a smofra, like a smoke screen almost to say, something very faint, maybe applied with your fan brush in a fan movement kind of way. There is a way to use a fan brush in this way. It's an old relic kind of a way from the Renaissance of fanning on color in the lightest fashion, almost you're powdering. It seems the skin, making it, uh, this is also in respect, I'm talking about the underpaintings. Okay, so using the fan brush to add color to an underpainting is a very beautiful and romantic way of painting. And so when you're working a la prima, straight on to a color, wet on wet, it becomes a very little bit of time that you would reach for a fan brush to get that effect of it being so blended and smooth and soft. Um, but but you may actually get that effect with a palette knife. So there's different effects, but in pastel, I don't even attempt to smear or do any kind of smearing. I don't think that that's what I want to do. I just usually just go over it again with another pastel to almost bring harmony and unity into the area, and grounding it with some form of local color or some hint of what of color, like a general color, whether it be pink or some kind of burnt sienna mixed with titanium white. Um, I I don't know. I don't know. I just go for what I absolutely see. And that's what I consider being true to myself and the work, is to at least rely on my own eye. It's interesting. I see kindergartners in kindergarten and first grade, and they have like no appreciation for art. I mean, it's a communication tool, but it's also something that is just done with the hands. It's almost an attempt to calm themselves down. It's very interesting. And some of them are amazing messages, and like they're communicating through the art. They're showing you how deep it is, and it's amazing because those are the born artists. You got it. Like they're like literally communicating with visual, but the rest of the kids, they don't really understand so much. They just know that they are moving their hands up and down, and it's amazing to see how we come from that to this. Um, uh, but just with the training of our eye and how it can calm us down and to focus and be in a zone where we are becoming almost hypnotically attached, to the production of the piece. Very productive, let's say. But that's what drives the artist, and that's what keeps them coming back to to give the retraction to the surface.